Voters in Georgia are already casting ballots in the state's pair of critical Senate runoff elections. Records show the state has already received and accepted over 71,000 mail-in ballots so far. In-person early voting begins December 14th. On Thursday, Vice President Mike Pence will return to Georgia for the third time in the past month. He's set to host a rally on behalf of Republican incumbent Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue in Augusta. On Monday, Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger recertified President-elect Joe Biden's victory after a second recount showed he defeated President Trump by over 12,000 votes. The election results have pitted Georgia Republicans against one another as President Trump continues to dispute the outcome. On Tuesday, the state's Republican Party chair, David Schaefer, announced that he and the Republican National Committee are suing the Secretary of State over observer practices during Georgia's initial ballot count. In a tweet, he said they were suing to get Raffensperger and other elections officials to, quote, do their job and obey the law. Raffensperger fired back, saying, from one Republican to another, please start focusing on what matters. If you put as much effort into the January runoffs as you have put on blaming others for your failures, we can't lose. For more, let's bring in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Washington correspondent, Tia Mitchell. Boy, Tia, things really are intensifying here as we approach that January 5th date. First of all, tell us more about who was eligible to already have received a mail-in ballot and what we know about who has requested them.
Well, any eligible Georgia voter can request an absentee ballot. In the past, they were seniors in Georgia were automatically receiving absentee ballots, but that was not the case for the special election. Everyone who wanted a mail-in ballot had to request one. What we're hearing already is that Democrats believe that they're doing a much better job than Republicans in getting their voters to go ahead and request and turn in those absentee ballots. They actually say that there are voters who did not participate in the general election who are getting involved in starting to request ballots or register to vote for this runoff.
Well, Republicans seem to be focusing their attacks on Democratic candidate Reverend Raphael Warnock much more than Jon Ossoff. Senator Loeffler repeatedly invoked the president's language, calling Warnock a, quote, radical liberal several times during the debate. What's behind that focus on Warnock?
And that's something we at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution have been writing about for months. You know, it's varied. Some of it is that, you know, Warnock is a political unknown. He's never run for office before, so he hasn't faced the type of attacks, for example, that Jon Ossoff faced when he ran for Congress in 2017. But there's also the fact that Warnock, let's be honest, he's a black man, a dark-skinned black man who's the pastor of a black church. And there are concerns that conservatives believe that attacking Warnock will help invigorate their base, particularly those who see issues with race and might not be amenable to voting for someone to become the first black U.S. senator from the South. And also just by virtue of him being a pastor, an activist pastor who's been vocal on social issues for many years, I think Republicans also think there are ways they can highlight excerpts of Warnock's sermons that they think that perhaps could turn some voters off to him.
You know, it's interesting you raised this question of race. I wonder how the demographics in Georgia now would be different compared to years past when that kind of strategy may have been successful in some years. How did the demographics that we saw, particularly with the presidential election, kind of fit into that approach?
And that's, again, Georgia is becoming a much more diverse state. It's also becoming a younger state. So there are fewer, the percentage of people of color, and we're not just talking about black, we're talking about Latino, Asian American, that has gone up in Georgia. In addition, our electorate is getting younger. And again, generally speaking, our electorate is becoming more democratic. So the question isn't so much about just the raw percentages in Georgia. The question is again about turnout. Which party will be able to turn out its votes? So yes, the Democratic coalition is broad, but if Republicans are the one who activate their voters and are able to best Democrats in turnout, then they can win. And I think the Republican Party believes that these attacks on Warnock not only can drag down Warnock, but also will have an effect on Ossoff because the Democrats and Republicans are each running as a ticket.
Well, at the top, we mentioned that back and forth between Secretary Raffensperger and GOP Chairman Schaefer. What is the Georgia Republican Party alleging in this lawsuit, and is it expected to go anywhere in court?
So there are very many lawsuits, but the one with the Republican Party and the state chairman is alleging that, I believe this one is alleging that illegal votes were counted and that, people who weren't eligible to vote were allowed to vote in Georgia. And of course, we can't predict what a judge might say, but I will say based on the track record and based on what looks like a lack of real clear evidence of any wrongdoing, that this lawsuit is likely to follow the same as all the other lawsuits, meaning they have not gone anywhere. Judges have dismissed each lawsuit that has been filed in Georgia thus far, except for the ones that are currently pending. And there are several pending, and some of the lawsuits have been dismissed and later appealed. But so far, none of the lawsuits that have alleged voting impropriety in Georgia, whether it's because they allege that ballots were not counted correctly or that ineligible people were allowed to vote, none of those lawsuits have been held up in court. They've all been dismissed thus far.
All right, Tia Mitchell for us. Tia, always great to have you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.